I stood in my $400,000 wedding dress, the culmination of my life's work as a designer and my dreams as a bride. The cathedral bustled with guests as I prepared to walk down the aisle toward James. My sister Ashley approached with what I thought was a final sisterly embrace. Instead, her fingers deliberately gripped the delicate crystal-encrusted bodice. As she pulled, the sound of tearing fabric echoed through the church. She leaned close and whispered, "You never deserved any of this." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother rushed over, but instead of comforting me, she positioned herself protectively in front of Ashley. In that moment, watching my masterpiece dress and perfect day unravel, I realized the family I had desperately tried to please for 30 years might destroy everything I had built. Looking back, I should have seen this coming. The signs were there all along, buried beneath my desperate hope that my family would finally accept me and my choices. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Atlanta, the oldest daughter of Diane and Thomas Wright. From childhood, it was clear my mother had a favorite, and it wasn't me. While I was practical and driven, my younger sister Ashley was dramatic and charming. She could wrap anyone around her finger with a smile, especially our mother. "Creative pursuits aren't practical, Candy," my mother told me when I announced my plans to study fashion design after high school. "You need a real job, something stable." Meanwhile, Ashley's flighty dreams of becoming an actress received enthusiastic support and even acting classes paid from our limited family budget. Despite the discouragement, I worked 3 jobs to put myself through design school. James entered my life during my second year when he came to the coffee shop where I worked mornings. He was in business school, pragmatic and focused like me, but he saw something in my sketches that even I doubted sometimes. "You're going to be extraordinary," he'd say, watching me draw wedding gowns during my breaks. "I've never seen anyone with your eye for detail." With James's encouragement, I graduated at the top of my class and secured an apprenticeship with a renowned bridal designer. The years that followed were a blur of 18, hour workdays, sore fingers, and determination. By 28, I launched my own bridal couture line. By 30, I had dressed celebrities and socialites, built a reputation for impeccable craftsmanship, and finally achieved the success my mother had claimed was impossible. Throughout those years, Ashley's life took a different path. After failing to land any significant acting roles, she cycled through dead-end jobs and increasingly destructive relationships. When she was 25, we received the call that she had been found unconscious in her apartment from an overdose. It was the first of many. "She needs help, Candy," my mother pleaded, despite my father's concerns about the cost. "We don't have the money for the good treatment centers." I paid for Ashley's first rehabilitation stay, and her second, and her third. I covered her rent when she was evicted. I hired her at my studio when no one else would take a chance on her, only to have her steal petty cash and disappear for days. Each time, she would return with tearful apologies that my mother insisted I accept. "She's your sister," Diane would say. "Family forgives." When James proposed after 8 years together, I was finally ready to start our own family, one built on mutual respect and support. For my wedding, I designed the most ambitious gown of my career. The $400,000 creation featured over 10,000 hand-sewn crystals, rare French lace that took 6 months to source, and a structural design that defied conventional bridal silhouettes. Fashion magazines clamored for the exclusive first photos. The wedding planning should have been joyful, but strange incidents kept occurring. Invitations went missing. The venue called to confirm changes I hadn't requested. The caterer received a cancellation email that wasn't from me. "It's just wedding stress," my business partner Laura assured me. "These things happen." When Ashley announced she was 6 months sober and asked to be my maid of honor, I wanted to believe it was genuine. James was skeptical. "After everything she's put you through, you're giving her a front row seat to the most important day of your life?" he asked one night as we went through final preparations. "She's trying, James. This could be our chance to heal everything. I just don't want to see you hurt again," he said, kissing my forehead. A week before the wedding, my wedding planner Gretchen quit without notice. When I finally reached her by phone, her voice was tight with discomfort. "I've received some calls that made me uncomfortable, Candy. threatening calls about the wedding. I think it's best I step away. That night, I confronted Ashley at the rehearsal dinner. Did you have anything to do with Gretchen quitting? Ashley's eyes widened with what looked like genuine shock. What? No. Why would I do that? I want your day to be perfect. She reached for my hand across the table. I know I've messed up a lot, but I'm better now. I promise. I chose to believe her, pushing down the doubts that had followed me for years. Family forgives, after all. The morning of my wedding dawned with perfect October weather, sunlight streaming through the windows of the bridal suite at the Street Regis. My 4 bridesmaids arrived early, Laura bringing coffee and pastries while my makeup artist set up her station. Ashley arrived 30 minutes late, but full of apologies and enthusiasm. The traffic was insane. But I'm here now, and I've got something blue for you. She handed me a delicate sapphire bracelet that looked surprisingly expensive. I wondered briefly where she'd gotten the money, but pushed the thought aside. Today was about new beginnings. As the makeup artist worked on my face, Ashley became unusually attentive, fetching things before I asked, adjusting my robe, offering water. It felt like the sister relationship I had always wanted, and tears pricked my eyes more than once. You deserve this day, she said, sounding sincere. I'm so proud of what you've built. When I stepped into my gown, carefully brought from the studio that morning under Laura's watchful eye, the room fell silent. The structural bodice created an ethereal silhouette, while the constellation of crystals caught every ray of light. The 20-foot train, embroidered with subtle symbols representing milestones in my career and relationship with James, pooled around my feet like liquid starlight. It's the most beautiful dress I've ever seen, whispered my friend Stephanie. You've outdone yourself, Laura agreed, adjusting the train with gloved hands to protect the delicate fabric. I was in the bathroom when Laura knocked urgently. Candy? Did you give Ashley your phone password? My stomach tightened. No. Why? I just saw her putting your phone down when I came back from getting the veil. She looked guilty. I found Ashley arranging flowers as if nothing had happened. When confronted, she laughed it off. I was just checking the time. My phone died. Before I could press further, Laura pulled me aside. There's something else. The studio called. Someone accessed the secure design server using your credentials about 20 minutes ago. They were looking at the files for your upcoming collection. A cold feeling spread through my chest, but I pushed it down. It's probably nothing. Maybe one of the assistants needed something urgent. Laura looked unconvinced. On your wedding day? Without calling me first? Let's deal with it tomorrow, I said firmly. Nothing is going to spoil today. My father Thomas arrived to escort me to the church, his eyes widening when he saw me. You look beautiful, Candy, he said, his voice cracking slightly. I noticed his hands trembling as he offered his arm, and there was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Nervousness? Guilt? Is everything okay, Dad? He blinked rapidly. Of course. Just emotional seeing my little girl all grown up. The cathedral was filled to capacity with 500 guests, a mix of family, friends, and fashion industry connections. As the string quartet began playing, my bridesmaids processed one by one, Ashley going last as maid of honor. I noticed her deliberately stepping on each bridesmaid's dress as she passed, small enough to look accidental but hard enough to make Stephanie stumble. Then it was my turn. The massive doors opened, and all eyes turned to me. My father and I began the long walk down the aisle, where James waited with a look of pure adoration. I focused on his face, ignoring the whispers about my dress, the flashing of discreet cameras documenting the design that would surely grace magazine covers. We were halfway down the aisle when Ashley stepped out from her position, ostensibly to adjust my train. I felt her fingers on the fabric, and for a moment I thought she was being helpful. Then came a sharp tug, followed by the unmistakable sound of ripping silk and breaking crystals. The collective gasp from the guests was deafening. I turned to see Ashley holding a large piece of my train, crystals scattering across the marble floor. The damage was extensive and deliberate, the structural elements of the dress compromised. The train that had taken 3 months to embroider lay partially detached. Oops, she said, loudly enough for the front rows to hear. Guess it wasn't constructed as well as everyone thought. The sanctuary fell silent. Then Ashley smiled, a cold expression I'd never seen before, and whispered so only I could hear, "You stole everything from me. This is just the beginning." As James stepped forward from the altar, his face dark with anger, I caught sight of something that made my blood freeze. My father, standing slightly behind me, was discreetly passing an envelope to Ashley. She accepted it with a small nod, tucking it into her bouquet. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. This was planned, and my own father was involved. "What are you doing?" I asked Ashley, my voice echoing through the silent cathedral. The wedding officiant stepped forward uncertainly. Perhaps we should move to a private area to address this situation? But Ashley wasn't interested in privacy. She turned to the stunned guests, raising her voice. "Everyone should know that this $400,000 dress isn't even her original design. She stole the concept from my sketches. My own sister built her career by stealing my ideas." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I stood frozen, unable to process the absurdity of her claim. Ashley had never shown any interest in design, let alone the technical skill required for couture. James reached my side, placing a protective arm around me. "That's ridiculous," he said firmly. "Candy has receipts for every element of this dress, from concept to completion." "Of course she does." My mother's voice cut through as she rushed forward. "She's always been clever about covering her tracks." I stared at my mother in disbelief. "Mom, you know that's not true. Ashley has never designed anything in her life." Several guests had their phones out, recording the scene. I recognized Vogue's fashion director and several other industry professionals among them, their expressions a mix of shock and skepticism. "I have the original sketches," Ashley insisted, turning to our mother. "Mom has seen them." "Tell them, Mom." Diane nodded vigorously. "I remember Ashley showing them to me last year. The resemblance is undeniable." My father remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. The envelope exchange suddenly made horrible sense. This wasn't just a jealous outburst. This was a coordinated attack. Laura pushed through the crowd, reaching my side. "This is absurd. I've worked with Candy for years. I witnessed every step of this dress's creation. These accusations are completely false." "You're just covering for her," Ashley shot back. "You're both making money off my ideas." The cathedral had descended into chaos. Guests were standing, some filming, others arguing among themselves. I could see my future in. Laws looking horrified. James's mother clutching her husband's arm with a stunned expression. "Enough," I said, finding my voice at last. "This is my wedding day, and you've deliberately destroyed my dress and tried to humiliate me with absurd accusations. I don't know what your endgame is, Ashley, but I promise you'll face consequences for this." "How dare you threaten my daughter?" my mother shrieked, her face contorted with a rage I'd never witnessed before. "After everything we've done for you." I laughed incredulously. "Everything you've done for me?" "I put myself through school. I built my business from nothing. I've paid for Ashley's rehab, her apartments, her debts. What exactly have you done for me except criticize and undermine me at every turn?" "You ungrateful little—" My mother didn't finish her sentence. Instead, her hand swung out, connecting with my face in a sharp slap that snapped my head back. Pain exploded across my cheekbone and nose. Gasps and cries erupted from the guests. James stepped between us, but it was too late. The momentum from my mother's blow sent me stumbling backward. I tried to catch myself, but the damaged structure of my dress hampered my movement. I crashed into the decorative table holding the unity candles and ceremonial items, sending everything clattering to the floor. I landed hard, tasting blood. When I touched my face, my fingers came away red. My white dress, already torn, now bloomed with crimson stains from my bleeding nose. Through watering eyes, I looked up at my mother and sister standing over me, and for the first time I saw them clearly. There was no love there, only calculated malice. As James and Laura rushed to help me up, the massive cathedral doors suddenly burst open with a thunderous bang that echoed through the sanctuary. Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway was Tara Wilson, a nationally recognized investigative journalist known for exposing corporate fraud and corruption. Behind her was a camera crew, their equipment already filming. "I believe I'm right on time," Tara announced, striding down the aisle with purposeful steps. "Candy Wright, I have information about what's really happening here today. Information your family doesn't want revealed." My mother's face drained of color. Ashley took an involuntary step backward, and for the first time since my dress was torn, I felt a flicker of hope beneath the pain and humiliation. "What is the meaning of this?" my mother demanded, recovering quickly. "This is a private ceremony. You have no right to be here." Tara Wilson approached with confidence, her camera crew following. "Actually, Mrs. Wright, I was invited. Not by your daughter, but by her business partner, Laura, who suspected something like this might happen." Laura squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you," she whispered, "but things weren't adding up, and I wanted backup in case my suspicions were right." Tara turned to the stunned wedding guests. "For those who don't know me, I'm Tara Wilson from American Exposé. For the past 3 months, I've been investigating a case of corporate espionage and familial fraud targeting Candy Wright and her business." "This is ridiculous," Ashley sputtered, but I noticed her eyes darting toward the exits. "Is it?" Tara asked, nodding to her producer, who set up a small projector. "Because I have documentation proving that Ashley Wright and Diane Wright have been systematically working to undermine Candy's business and personal life for years." The projector illuminated the wall beside the altar, displaying emails, bank statements, and photographs. The guests murmured as Tara began explaining. "These are emails between Ashley Wright and 3 of Candy's competitors, offering to sell proprietary designs and client information stolen from Candy's company. The most recent communications concern her upcoming collection, which Ashley promised to deliver after, quote, dealing with my sister once and for all at her wedding." My heart pounded as image after image appeared on the screen. Ashley meeting with representatives from rival design houses, bank statements showing transfers to her account. And most shockingly, surveillance photos of my mother accompanying her to these meetings. "Mrs. Diane Wright appears to have been the architect of this scheme," Tara continued, her voice carrying through the cathedral. "According to our sources, she has amassed considerable gambling debts over the past 5 years, which she's been hiding from her husband." My father's face crumpled, confusion and betrayal evident in his expression. "Diane?" he asked weakly. "What is she talking about?" Tara turned to him sympathetically. "I'm sorry, Mr. Wright, but your wife has been using your family's finances, including a second mortgage on your home that was taken out in both your names, to cover gambling losses of over $300,000. Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd. My father looked as though he might collapse. "That's a lie!" my mother shouted, but her voice lacked conviction. "We have the documents, Mrs. Wright, signed by both you and your husband, though it appears his signature was forged on several of them." James helped me to my feet, supporting me as I struggled to process what I was hearing. My own mother and sister had been plotting against me for years, not just out of jealousy but for financial gain. "The plan," Tara continued, facing the audience of stunned guests, was to publicly discredit Candy at her high-profile wedding, making accusations of design theft that would damage her professional reputation. Ashley would then launch her own line, using the stolen designs, claiming they were her original work that Candy had appropriated. "You can't prove any of this," Ashley said, though her voice trembled slightly. "Actually, we can." Tara nodded to her producer again, who played an audio recording. Ashley's voice filled the cathedral. "Once we destroy her credibility, the buyers will come to me instead. No one will believe anything she says after the wedding disaster. Mom's arranged everything. Dad doesn't know yet, but he'll have to go along with it once it's done." I looked at my father, who appeared genuinely shocked and devastated. "You knew nothing about this?" I asked him. He shook his head, tears in his eyes. "I swear, Candy, I had no idea. Diane told me this morning that Ashley was planning a special surprise for you, and I needed to give her this envelope when she fixed your train. She said it was part of a wedding tradition." "What's in the envelope, Dad?" My father looked ashamed. $10,000. Diane said it was a gift for Ashley arranging something special. I didn't question it because your mother handles our finances. $10,000 we don't have, he added quietly. Tara continued her exposition. But perhaps most disturbing is this. The screen showed documents from an insurance company. 3 months ago, Mrs. Wright took out a substantial insurance policy on her daughter's wedding. The policy includes unusual specific clauses about coverage in case of public allegations of intellectual property theft. My mother's face had gone from pale to ashen. In other words, Tara explained, if Candy's reputation was publicly damaged by accusations of design theft at her wedding, her mother would collect a $500,000 payout, more than enough to cover those gambling debts. The cathedral erupted in shocked conversations. James's parents approached, his mother embracing me despite the blood on my dress. "We had no idea," she said. "I'm so sorry, Candy." I turned to Tara, still trying to process everything. "How did you discover all this?" It started with anonymous tips about irregular financial activities, but when we dug deeper, we found a pattern of behavior going back years. She glanced at Ashley. "Including the fact that your sister has actually been sober for nearly 3 years. I stared at Ashley, who couldn't meet my eyes. 3 years? But the rehab stays, the relapses. All fabricated to extract money from you, Tara confirmed. The most recent rehab payments went directly to setting up a competing design studio under Ashley's name. My sister finally looked at me, defiance replacing her earlier uncertainty. "You always had everything," she said bitterly. "The talent, the success, the perfect fiancé. It wasn't fair. I worked for everything I have," I said quietly. "And I would have helped you build your own success if you'd asked. I've been trying to help you my entire life." "We don't need your help or your pity," my mother spat, grabbing Ashley's arm. "This isn't over. Come on, Ashley, we're leaving." But as they turned to go, 2 uniformed police officers stepped into the cathedral. Tara nodded at them. "Officers, these are the individuals I called about. I have evidence of fraud, identity theft, and now assault that occurred just minutes ago." "You called the police?" I asked, surprised. "Laura did," Tara explained. "As soon as your mother struck you. We have it all on camera." As the officers approached my mother and sister, the full weight of what had happened began to sink in. My wedding was ruined. My family had betrayed me in the most public and painful way possible. And now everyone knew, 500 guests plus whoever would see Tara's eventual report. James put his arm around me. "Let's get out of here," he said gently. "We can deal with the rest tomorrow." As we turned to leave, I noticed Tara's producer zoom in on my face, capturing my tears and bloodied nose for their program. Even in my pain, I understood this wasn't just about me anymore. It was a story, a scandal, a public spectacle. My private betrayal had just become national news. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of pain medication, police statements, and tears. James took me to the Four Seasons, where we'd planned to spend our wedding night before leaving for our honeymoon. Now, instead of celebrating the beginning of our marriage, we were hiding from reporters and trying to make sense of my family's betrayal. Laura arrived the next morning with a change of clothes and news from the outside world. "It's everywhere," she said grimly, setting her phone on the coffee table. "The wedding betrayal is trending on every platform." I scrolled through headlines. Fashion designer attacked by family at own wedding, mother, daughter plot to destroy bridal empire exposed, bloody bride, $400,000 dress destroyed in family feud. "The studio's been fielding calls non-stop," Laura continued. "Every fashion magazine, news outlet, and morning show wants an exclusive." "What about the business?" I asked, my practical side emerging despite my emotional exhaustion. "That's actually the silver lining. Orders have tripled overnight. Apparently, having your own mother try to destroy you is great for brand awareness." Laura attempted a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, and our legal team arrived at 6 this morning. They're in the suite next door when you're ready." The meeting with the lawyers was clinical and surreal. They outlined potential charges against my mother and sister: assault, fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, attempted corporate espionage. The evidence Tara Wilson had compiled was substantial and damning. "What about my father?" I asked. "Based on preliminary investigation, it appears he was unaware of the scheme," the head lawyer, Patricia, explained. "He's cooperating fully with authorities." By afternoon, messages of support began flooding in from industry colleagues, clients, and even designers I'd considered rivals. The fashion world, normally cutthroat and competitive, had united around me. It should have been comforting, but all I felt was numb. "You need to issue a statement," Patricia advised. "Control the narrative before it controls you." James disagreed. "She needs rest. This can wait." "Unfortunately, it can't," Patricia insisted, showing us more headlines, these speculating about family dynamics and childhood traumas. "The longer you stay silent, the more they'll invent." We crafted a brief statement thanking people for their support, confirming that legal proceedings were underway, and requesting privacy during this difficult time. It felt inadequate and hollow, but it was the best I could manage. James's parents called, offering their guest house in Connecticut as a refuge. "Stay as long as you need," his mother said warmly. "No one will bother you there." I was considering their offer when the hotel phone rang. The front desk informed me my mother was in the lobby, demanding to see me. "Tell her to leave before I call security," I said automatically. "I think you should see her," James said after I hung up, surprising me. "Why would I do that?" "Because otherwise, you'll always wonder what she wanted to say." I knew he was right. With James beside me for support, I agreed to meet her in a private conference room with hotel security nearby. My mother looked smaller somehow, her usual confident posture replaced by a defensive hunch. Her eyes were red, rimmed, but her expression remained defiant. "What do you want?" I asked coldly. "I want you to drop the charges," she said immediately. "This is a family matter. It should stay within the family." I laughed in disbelief. "A family matter? You orchestrated the public humiliation of your own daughter for money. You struck me in front of 500 people. It stopped being a family matter the moment you decided to destroy me." "Don't be so dramatic, Candy. No one was trying to destroy you. We just needed the insurance money. Your career would have recovered." "And what about Ashley, selling my designs to competitors? What about the identity theft, the years of manipulation?" My mother waved dismissively. "Ashley deserved a chance too. You've always had all the advantages." "What advantages? I worked for everything while you bankrolled her failures." "This isn't getting us anywhere," she said, abruptly changing tactics. "The point is, if you continue with these charges, you're no longer welcome in this family. Your father agrees." James tensed beside me. "That's a lie. Thomas has been cooperating with the investigation." My mother's eyes flashed with momentary panic before she composed herself. "He'll come around. Blood is thicker than water." "Is that a threat or a promise?" I asked, standing. "Because honestly, Mother, being excluded from a family that tried to destroy me doesn't sound like much of a punishment." "You ungrateful little—" She caught herself, aware of the security guard watching from the corner. "Fine, have it your way. But don't come crying to us when this publicity ruins your precious business." "I think we're done here," James said firmly, taking my arm. As we turned to leave, my mother called after us. "You were always too ambitious for your own good, Candy, always thinking you were better than us. This is what happens when you forget where you came from." I paused at the door. "No, Mother. This is what happens when you can't stand to see your daughter succeed where you failed. I didn't forget where I came from. You couldn't stand what I became." We left the next morning for James's parents' home in Connecticut, leaving Laura to manage the immediate business concerns and the legal team to handle the developing case. The press had somehow discovered our hotel, and we had to exit through the service entrance to avoid the cameras. 3 days later, Laura called with news that shook me all over again. "Someone broke into the studio last night," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "They destroyed samples from the new collection and spray, painted 'Thief' on your office wall." "My mother and sister are in custody," I said, confused. "They couldn't have. The security footage shows 2 men we don't recognize. Police are investigating, but they were probably hired by my mother," I finished for her. That night, as James slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling of his parents' guest room, feeling more lost than I ever had. My wedding was ruined, my family had betrayed me, my business was in chaos, and my safe spaces had been violated. The life I had carefully built over years of hard work seemed to be crumbling around me. I had no idea how to begin picking up the pieces. The next morning, a package arrived by courier. Inside was a USB drive and a note from someone unexpected. My 14-year-old cousin Megan, my mother's niece who had been a junior bridesmaid at the wedding. "I'm sorry about what happened," the note read in careful teenage handwriting. "I've been staying with Aunt Diane and Ashley a lot lately because my parents work late. I overheard them planning stuff about your wedding and your business. I recorded some of it on my phone because it seemed wrong. I know I should have told you sooner. I'm really sorry." With trembling hands, I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. The audio files contained months of conversations between my mother and sister, detailing their plans to sabotage my wedding and business in explicit detail. In one recording, my mother explicitly mentioned her gambling debts and how the insurance payout would solve everything. In another, Ashley laughed about faking her relapses to extract money from me. Most damning was a conversation from just days before the wedding, where they discussed involving my father. "He's too soft," my mother complained. "He actually loves her. We'll have to keep him in the dark until it's too late for him to stop it." "What if he sides with her afterward?" Ashley asked. "He won't," my mother said confidently. "Once it's done, he'll have no choice but to go along with our story. His name is on those loans, too. If Candy presses charges, he'll go down with me." I sent the recordings to our legal team immediately. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed myself to truly break down, sobbing until I had no tears left. It wasn't just the wedding or the dress or even the betrayal itself. It was the realization that my entire life had been built on a foundation of lies. The family I had desperately tried to please, the sister I had repeatedly forgiven and supported, the mother whose approval I had sought for decades, they had never wanted my success. They had only wanted to use it for their own gain. When the tears finally stopped, something else took their place. A cold, clear determination. They had taken my wedding day and my sense of family. They had tried to take my reputation and my business, but I was still standing, and I would not let them take anything else from me. For 2 weeks, I disappeared from public view. No statements, no interviews, no social media. James canceled our honeymoon to stay with me, and his parents kept all visitors away. The fashion world and media speculated wildly about my condition and future plans, but I needed the silence to think and heal. During that time, I had only limited contact with Laura, who was valiantly keeping our business afloat, and Patricia, who updated me on the legal proceedings. My cousin Megan's recordings had significantly strengthened the case against my mother and sister. "Your father has filed for divorce," Patricia informed me during one call. "He's agreed to testify against your mother regarding the forged financial documents." I felt oddly detached from this news. The father I thought I knew had allowed my mother's favoritism to shape our family dynamics for decades. Even if he hadn't been aware of their specific plot, he had been complicit in a lifetime of smaller betrayals. On the 15th day of my self-imposed exile, Laura arrived in person with a stack of magazines and folders. "It's time to come back," she said without preamble. "The narrative is shifting, and we need to take control of it." The magazines she brought showed how the story had evolved. Initially focused on the shocking wedding drama, coverage had shifted to deeper investigations of my family background, my business practices, and the fashion industry's response. Most notably, Vogue had devoted their main feature to the Phoenix designer, with industry leaders praising my work and integrity. "Everyone's on your side," Laura said, "but sympathy has a short shelf life. We need to transform it into something more sustainable." The folders contained proposals from major players: a Harper's Bazaar cover story, a Netflix documentary offer, speaking engagements at fashion schools, and collaboration proposals from 3 major designers who had previously ignored my overtures. "The world loves a comeback story even more than they love a scandal," Laura pointed out. "But it has to be on your terms, with your voice leading the narrative." She was right. I had been hiding, nursing my wounds, while others controlled my story. It was time to reclaim it. We developed a strategic plan. First, an in-depth exclusive interview with Tara Wilson, who had broken the original story. The piece would focus not on the wedding disaster, but on my journey as a designer and businesswoman, with the family betrayal as just one challenge I had overcome. Second, A carefully curated return to social media, showcasing the creation process of my next collection rather than my personal pain. Third, a limited series of interviews with selected fashion publications, building momentum toward Fashion Week. What about the legal proceedings? I asked Patricia during a strategy session. They're solid. Your mother and sister are facing serious charges. With the evidence we have, particularly Megan's recordings, they'll likely take a plea deal rather than risk a trial. And my father? Patricia's expression softened slightly. He's cooperating fully. His testimony about the forged financial documents is particularly valuable. In return, prosecutors are likely to view him as a victim rather than an accomplice. I nodded, feeling the complicated mix of emotions that now surfaced whenever my family was mentioned. I don't want him to go to jail, but I'm not ready to forgive him either. You don't have to decide anything about your personal relationship with him right now, Patricia assured me. Focus on rebuilding your professional life first. The interview with Tara went better than expected. She was respectful of my boundaries while still getting enough emotional content to make the piece compelling. The resulting article, Designing Resilience, became the most read story on their platform that month. My return to the studio was emotional. The vandalism had been cleaned up, but knowing strangers had violated my creative space left me feeling vulnerable. Still, being surrounded by fabrics, sketches, and the familiar hum of sewing machines was healing in its own way. The design team welcomed me back with a mix of sympathy and determination. We've received 700 messages of support from clients, my sales director reported. And orders for the spring collection have quadrupled, even though we haven't released any images yet. While my professional resurrection was gaining momentum, my personal life remained in limbo. James and I had postponed rather than canceled our wedding, but neither of us was ready to set a new date. The betrayal had cast a shadow over the very idea of a celebration. "We don't need a big ceremony," James said one night as we walked along the Connecticut shoreline. "We could do something private, just us." "I don't know what I want anymore," I admitted, "except that I want to be with you." "Then that's enough for now," he said, squeezing my hand. 4 weeks after the wedding disaster, I received an unexpected call from my father's doctor, Dr. Michaels. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something made me answer. "Miss Wright? I'm calling about your father, Thomas. He's been admitted to Hartford Hospital." My heart raced. "What happened? Is he okay?" "He's stable now, but he suffered a minor heart attack yesterday. Tests have revealed a more serious underlying condition. He's asking to see you, but he was adamant that I tell you something first." The doctor paused. "He's been diagnosed with advanced stage pancreatic cancer. The prognosis is approximately 6 months. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My father, for all his flaws and failures to protect me from my mother's manipulation, was dying, and he wanted to see me. He said to tell you that he understands if you refuse," Dr. Michaels added gently. "I'll come tomorrow," I said, surprising myself with the immediacy of my decision. That night, I discussed it with James, who had concerns. "It could be another manipulation," he pointed out carefully. "Your mother has gone to extraordinary lengths before." "I thought of that," I admitted. I called Dr. Michaels back and verified his credentials, and I asked Laura to confirm my father's admission through her hospital board contacts. "It's legitimate." James nodded, accepting my decision. "Then I'll go with you, but we should alert Patricia, just in case." Laura had the same concerns when I called her. "It feels convenient," she said bluntly. "Just as the legal case is building, suddenly there's a terminal illness that might generate sympathy." "I know," I acknowledged, "but I need to see him. If there's even a chance this is real and I ignore it." "I understand," Laura said. "But let's be smart about this. I'll have our security consultant accompany you discreetly, and maybe we should alert Tara Wilson. If this is another setup, having a journalist on standby might be useful." The preparations felt extreme, but after everything that had happened, caution seemed prudent. As we made arrangements for the hospital visit, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Candy? It's me, Megan." My young cousin sounded nervous. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "I just wanted to warn you. Aunt Diane has been calling people from jail, including my mom. She's really angry about those recordings I gave you." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I heard my mom telling my dad that Aunt Diane said you'll regret it if you show up at the hospital tomorrow." A cold feeling spread through my chest. "Thank you for telling me, Megan. You've been very brave through all of this. Are you still going to visit Uncle Thomas?" I thought about my father, alone in a hospital bed, possibly truly dying. I thought about the little girl I had once been, desperate for his protection. I thought about the man who had failed to stand up to my mother for 30 years, until it was almost too late. "Yes," I said finally, "but I won't be going alone." The next morning, I dressed with deliberate care. Not in designer clothes or anything flashy, but in a simple blue dress that my father had once complimented. James drove while I stared out the window, rehearsing what I might say to the man who had stood by while his wife and younger daughter plotted to destroy me. Laura's security consultant, a former police officer named Ray, met us in the hospital parking lot. "I've done a preliminary sweep," he reported. "Thomas Wright is indeed in room 412. No sign of Diane or Ashley, though they're both still in custody awaiting trial." "Any other family members?" James asked. "None that I could identify. The nursing staff has been alerted that you're coming and that there might be security concerns." Patricia, my lawyer, called as we entered the building. The district attorney's office confirmed that both Diane and Ashley were in court for a preliminary hearing this morning. They're nowhere near the hospital. With these reassurances, I felt confident enough to proceed. The hospital corridor seemed endless, each step bringing me closer to a confrontation I both dreaded and needed. When we finally reached room 412, James squeezed my hand. "I'll be right outside with Ray if you need me." I nodded, took a deep breath, and pushed open the door. The room was dim, illuminated only by the muted television and monitoring equipment. My father looked smaller than I remembered, his skin yellowish against the white hospital sheets. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. "Candy, you came." I stood at the foot of his bed, maintaining my distance. "Dr. Michaels said you wanted to see me." He nodded weakly. "I didn't think you would come after everything." "Is it true? About the cancer?" "Yes. 6 months, maybe less." He gestured toward a folder on the bedside table. "The scans and reports are there if you want to verify. I told the doctors to share everything with you." I glanced at the medical documents, but didn't pick them up. I hadn't come for paperwork. "Why did you want to see me?" I asked directly. My father's eyes dropped to his hands, thin and spotted with age. "To apologize. Not just for the wedding, but for everything. For every time I didn't stand up for you. For every time I let your mother favor Ashley. For not being the father you deserved." His words sounded rehearsed but sincere, as if he'd been practicing them while waiting for me. "Did you know what they were planning? Before the wedding?" He shook his head emphatically. "I swear to you, I didn't. I knew your mother had financial troubles. I knew she and Ashley were unusually interested in your wedding plans. But I never imagined they would, that they could. Humiliate me in front of everyone I know? Destroy my wedding dress? Try to ruin my business and reputation?" My voice was steady, despite the emotions churning beneath. "Yes, all of that." I couldn't believe it, even as it was happening. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "The envelope. I thought it was a wedding tradition. Something special Ashley had arranged. Your mother said it was customary for the father of the bride to give money to the maid of honor for handling the bride's train. And you believed that?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "I wanted to," he admitted. "I've spent 30 years believing what she wanted me to believe. It was easier than facing the truth." I moved to the window, needing space to think. Outside, life continued normally, people coming and going without any awareness of the drama unfolding in this room. I envied their ordinary problems. "I filed for divorce," my father said into the silence. "Not just because of what happened at the wedding, but because the investigation revealed so many things I didn't know. The gambling, the loans in my name, the manipulation of you and Ashley." "Ashley wasn't manipulated," I corrected him. "She was a willing participant." "Yes and no," he sighed. Your mother shaped her from childhood to be dependent and entitled. But you're right, she made her own choices as an adult. We were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. A nurse entered to check my father's vitals, giving me a moment to collect my thoughts. When she left, my father reached for the drawer of his bedside table. I have something for you. Documents I've been gathering since the wedding. Evidence that might help your case. He handed me a thick envelope. Inside were bank statements, emails, and handwritten notes spanning years. Documentation of my mother's gambling, her manipulation of family finances, and her systematic campaign to undermine me while promoting Ashley. I found these hidden in her personal files, he explained. Some date back to when you were in design school. She was sabotaging you even then, calling potential employers to give bad references, intercepting acceptance letters. I stared at the evidence of decades of betrayal, feeling oddly numb. Why are you giving me this? Because you deserve the truth, and because I want to make amends in what time I have left. He reached for my hand, which I allowed after a moment's hesitation. I'm testifying against your mother and sister. I've given the prosecutors everything I know. Why now? Why not years ago when it might have made a difference? His eyes filled with tears again. Because I was a coward. Because I convinced myself that keeping the peace was more important than doing what was right. Because I failed as a father in every way that matters. I wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the righteous indignation that had sustained me since the wedding. But looking at my broken father, I felt only tiredness and a strange sense of closure. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly, but I hear your apology. He nodded, accepting this partial peace offering. That's more than I deserve. We sat in silence for a while, the monitors beeping softly in the background. Finally, I asked the question that had been nagging at me. Why did she hate me so much? What did I ever do except try to succeed? My father considered this, seeming to weigh his words carefully. Your mother had dreams once, design dreams like yours. But she gave them up when she got pregnant with you, and she never stopped resenting that sacrifice. Every success you achieved was a reminder of what she thought she could have been. It wasn't a satisfying answer, but it was probably the closest to the truth I would ever get. Some broken things can't be fully explained. We were interrupted by raised voices in the hallway. I recognized my mother's strident tone immediately, followed by James's firm objections. Apparently the court hearing had ended early. My father's eyes widened with panic. She's not supposed to be here. There's a restraining order. The door burst open, and my mother stormed in, followed by Ashley. Both looked disheveled and angry. James and Ray appeared immediately behind them. I'm sorry, Candy, James said tensely. They claimed to be approved visitors and slipped past the nursing station. My mother ignored him, focusing her fury on my father. You traitor! Giving her ammunition against her own family. Diane, you need to leave, my father said, with more backbone than I'd ever heard from him. The restraining order? I don't care about any restraining order. What I care about is you selling us out to save your own skin. She turned to me, eyes blazing. And you, coming here to manipulate a dying man into turning against his real family. I stood my ground, clutching the envelope of evidence. I came because he asked to see me, and the only manipulation in this family has been from you, for decades. Ashley stepped forward, her expression a mix of desperation and defiance. Just drop the charges, Candy. We can work this out privately, as a family. We stopped being a family the moment you deliberately destroyed my wedding dress and tried to ruin my career, I replied evenly. You made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. You self-righteous bitch, my mother spat, lunging for the envelope in my hands. Give me those papers. Ray stepped between us swiftly. Ma'am, you need to leave now. You're violating a court order by being here. This is between family, my mother shouted. Stay out of it. Ashley tried a different approach, her eyes suddenly filling with practiced tears. Candy, please. Think about what this will do to Dad in his condition. The stress could kill him. Don't use me as a shield, Ashley, my father said firmly. I've enabled your behavior and your mother's for too long. It stops now. My mother's face contorted with rage. She grabbed for the hospital water pitcher and hurled it toward the evidence envelope. I stepped back, but water splashed across the papers. "Diane, stop!" My father tried to sit up, triggering alarms on his monitoring equipment. As nurses rushed in, Ray and James managed to restrain my mother. Ashley made a desperate grab for the wet documents, tearing several before I could pull them away. "Security to room 412. A nurse called into her radio. We need assistance immediately." Within minutes, hospital security arrived, followed shortly by police who had been alerted to the restraining order violation. As they handcuffed my mother and sister, my mother made one last desperate attempt. "Thomas, tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Tell them we're just having a family disagreement." My father looked at her steadily. "No more lies, Diane. No more manipulation. I've given Candy everything she needs to make sure you never hurt her again." As they were led away, my mother's face transformed into something almost unrecognizable with hate. "This isn't over. Family is forever, whether you like it or not." When they were gone, my father collapsed back against his pillows, his face ashen. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said weakly. "Are you okay?" I asked, genuinely concerned despite everything. He nodded. "I think so. Candy, those documents. Some are damaged, but most are salvageable," I assured him. "And with your testimony, they'll be even more powerful." "Good." He closed his eyes briefly. "I want you to have my house when I'm gone. It's not much, but once the mortgage your mother took out is sorted, there should be some equity. Use it to rebuild whatever you need." "Dad, we don't need to talk about that now." "Yes, we do. Time is the one thing I don't have." He opened his eyes, meeting mine directly. "I'm proud of you, Candy. I should have told you that every day of your life." I felt tears threatening for the first time since entering the hospital. Thank you for saying it now. 1 year later, the lights of the Metropolitan Museum dimmed as I stepped onto the stage, the audience falling silent in anticipation. Fashion Week's closing gala had chosen to feature my Phoenix collection, inspired by my journey through fire to resurrection. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began, looking out at the assembled fashion elite, journalists, and industry leaders. A year ago, I wasn't sure I would ever design again. Today, I'm grateful for the opportunity to share not just beautiful clothes, but the story of resilience they represent. The collection was my most personal work to date. Each piece incorporated elements of transformation, with structural designs that evolved as the models moved. The finale dress, worn by a model who entered to audible gasps, featured intricate crystal work that caught and reflected light in cascading patterns reminiscent of tears transforming into diamonds. After the show, during the champagne reception, James squeezed my hand. "Your father would have been proud." Thomas had died 4 months after our reconciliation. During those months, he had testified against my mother and sister, provided all the evidence he had gathered, and worked to make amends in whatever ways he could. We never became close in the way I had longed for as a child, but we found a measure of peace that had seemed impossible after the wedding disaster. My mother and sister had accepted plea deals rather than face public trials. The sentences were substantial enough to satisfy justice without being vengeful. I had chosen not to attend their sentencings, sending Patricia instead. Some chapters needed to be closed without confrontation. Laura appeared at my elbow, glowing with satisfaction. "The buyers are falling over themselves. We've already had offers from 3 major department stores for exclusive launches. And Vogue wants you for their September cover," James added. "Solo, no interview necessary." The validation felt good, but it wasn't what sustained me anymore. The true victory had been internal, building a life defined by my choices rather than my family's dysfunction. James and I had finally married 3 months ago, in a private ceremony on a Connecticut beach with only our closest friends present. My dress had been simple but perfect, designed not to impress anyone but to celebrate our love. The house my father left me had been sold, the proceeds split between my business expansion and a foundation I'd established to help young designers from troubled backgrounds. The studio now ran mentorship programs and scholarships, transforming my personal pain into opportunities for others. Tara Wilson approached, champagne in hand. The comeback queen herself. "Mind if I steal you for a moment? The Times wants a follow. up piece on your journey. Actually, I think I'm done telling that story, I said gently. It's time for new narratives. Tara nodded understandingly. Fair enough. But if you change your mind, my door is always open. As the evening wound down, James and I slipped away from the crowd, finding a quiet moment on the museum's rooftop garden. The New York skyline sparkled around us, a constellation of possibilities. Happy? James asked, his arm around my waist. I considered the question seriously. Not exactly happy. Whole, I think. For maybe the first time. The road from that disastrous wedding day to this moment had been long and painful. I had lost the family I was born into, but found the strength to create the life I truly wanted. The betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but in rebuilding, I had discovered parts of myself that might have remained forever dormant otherwise. Sometimes the most beautiful designs emerge from the most damaged materials. Sometimes the strongest bonds form after the worst betrayals. And sometimes the truest family is the one you choose, rather than the one you're given. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal by someone you trusted? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Building this community has been one of the most healing parts of my journey, and I'm grateful for each of you who has shared it with me. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more content like this, and share it with someone who might need to hear that rising from the ashes is possible. Thank you for being here with me today. And remember, sometimes our greatest strength is revealed only when we're tested by fire.